How are you, Mike?
Oh, how are you, buddy?
Good.
Cool. So, Emma, hello, baby. You're gonna sit there. All right, don't kick my chair, all right? Okay, so let's just get cracking. Thank you for hanging out on a Saturday. Polarized training. So I don't know how much we know about this, or how much you guys know about this. How cued in you are. I know some of you would be training this way already. So a little bit about why I wanted to just do this webinar was because I've been doing a lot of research in the last couple of weeks, and it just dawned on me that this is a really elegant way to present what I've been trying to get my athletes to do, right? So are you seeing the next page? Sorry, let me just check. Okay, so we're gonna start with intro and basics for those that are, not sure what polarized training is. Then the important parts is about the calibration, like how to set the zones correctly, okay, and the importance of field testing, and then also how to apply these to your training, all right? And then a little bit about the relevance of threshold training, and then how we can shift the polarized training to a more pyramidal state. So basically today's talk, right, I'm not saying this is the only way and the best way to train, and I'm not laying down any strict guidelines. I just want to introduce you to the idea of polarized training, what it means, and how to do it right. Okay, so you guys just chime in whenever you have a question. That's probably good. Okay, so what is polarized training? So a lot of my research in the last couple of weeks has come from reading and watching articles, videos by this, he's a professor called Stephen Seiler. So I don't know if you've heard of him, but he's the world authority on polarized training. He's dedicated his life, 20 years of his life to studying endurance training, okay? Him and this other bloke called Matt Fitzgerald, who you guys will know is my favorite author. He's written lots of good books, and this one, 80-20 training, this is what he talks about. So Matt references Seiler a lot, and that's where I got the kind of the referral from. Okay, so today I'm just a messenger, if you like. I'm just telling you in a condensed version like what these guys are saying. Okay, so polarized training, like from the start of my triathlon career, like 10 years ago, I've heard like keep your easies easy, keep and make sure you go hard, keep your hards, right? And so that's always in the back of our minds, and we try our best to practice it, but then there'll be some guy on a Saturday ride, Alexi, who like just searches for head, right? And I know it's fun, and I know I've been accused of that many a time, and it's enjoyable, okay? But just keep in mind what we're talking about today, all right? So popularly known as 80-20 training, okay? And why that is because 80% of the training, all right, is done in the easy portion. Hang on, I need to pull up the. Are you seeing the mouse? Okay, so I need to pull up a laser pointer. Anyone know how to do that? Here we go. Pen and laser pointer. Yeah, can you see that? Yeah. So 80% done in this easy portion here, okay? 20% done in the hard portion here. That's the basic ground rules. So train mostly easy, train sometimes hard, and don't train in the middle at all, okay? Don't train in this moderate zone at all. So is it really as simple as that, right? In this graph, we can see the time and distribution of a polarized training schedule, right? So you can see 80% here is, okay, so LIT, today we talk LIT refers to low intensity training, all right? Oh, hang on, there's one guy in the meeting room. Who's this guy, Admit? Okay, he should be here. And HIT today here refers to high intensity training, all right? And THT is the moderate zone, which we will just call threshold training, okay? Because that's what is referred to. So is it really as simple as that? How do I change slide now?
Click the forward arrow. Yeah.
Okay, thanks. Okay, so what's in the name? 80-20 comes about. Actually, this is one of the things that I found out when I was doing the research on this, is that it refers to the number of sessions and not the time and zone. So that's quite important when you look into the details of it. All right, so 80-20 refers to the number of sessions done in the easy and hard ratio. So for every 10 sessions that you do, if you're training 80-20, then you're doing 8 sessions easy and 2 sessions hard, right? If you actually take a look at the studies that have been done on elite, like we're talking like Steven Seiler, his research, right, is really on elite rowers, cross-country skiers, all right, cyclists. So bear in mind that his research is a lot done in single sport modalities, right? But when he pulled together all the studies, all the times, the distributions, he's found that actually it was more like 90-10, okay? 9 in terms of time and distribution. So for every 10 hours of training, 90% was done easy, 9 hours was done easy, and 1 hour only was done hard. And this was repeated in his findings over and over again, okay? So what that means for us as like a, like a 10-hour a week athlete means, well, we should be really doing 9 hours easy and only 1 hour hard. And that 1 hour is spread across all 3 sports, okay? So think about that. Like, that means we're supposed to, like, if we distribute it evenly, like 20 minutes per sport hard, right? So when I did that, I thought, well, how many of you are feeling overtrained, right? How many of you are training a lot hard, a lot more, spending a lot more time training hard, okay? So, hang on. Here we go. So these are the 2 ways of quantifying the 80-20 spread. So my question then was, which one is better? Like, obviously 90-10 is more accurate, right? Like if you chart how much time is spent below that first threshold and how much time is spent above that threshold, and we'll get to those, then 90-10 is more accurate. But in terms of a practical, everyday athlete training usage point of view, like I think that the 80-20 has a lot going for it. Simply because if you count the number of sessions done, then you can demark, like, Saturday and Sunday are easy days. So those are 2 of your easy days, right? And you can demark a proper hard day if you count according to sessions. Does everyone understand what I'm trying to say? Right? Like, so Monday, or let's say we do intervals on Zwift on Tuesday, right? So Tuesday is a dedicated hard day. So you can count that as a hard day. 2 out of the 10, one day is a Tuesday, right? As opposed to counting the actual minutes spent in these certain zones, okay? Right. And the other side point I have here is like the clearer you demark these, then you allow for a better recovery in between. Okay, so you guys will know that it's all about the recovery. So much of it, like you can train the house down, but the recovery is so important. Okay, and this is something that every one of us struggles with. All right, just getting enough time to recover from our workouts. Okay. So basically just do a lot of easy work and a little bit of hard work. I want to explain on the next slide why the underlying principles, and it's pretty logical when you break it down, okay? So the bottom line is like success in endurance training, the lowest common denominator is that you have to train a lot. You guys will know this. A lot of you are upwards of 10, 12, 14 hours a week. So you already know that, to be good, you need to train a lot. There's no two ways about it. But how we spend our time, how we spend those 10, 12, 14 hours, we need to train smart. And this is the big deal, what polarized training is about, all right? How can we train at a high volume, right, without getting injured? And as we get, as we age up and everything starts to hurt and gets sore and niggles and, can't get out of bed in the morning, right? That becomes really important to us as we age up, okay? So injury prevention is a big theme, right? And polarized training just allows you to train at a high volume without getting injured because a lot of it is done at an easier intensity, okay? At low intensity training, LIT, right? Your recovery is very quick because you don't carry around a lot of that muscle damage from threshold training, from hard training, right? Which recovery takes a lot longer, right? Now, there's also many important physiological adaptations that take place at low intensity that lend itself for better endurance performance, okay? So the Fitzgerald book is full of them. I'll just list them. Just can't have time to go into them. It's about like the cellular signaling and all that kind of stuff. But easy aerobic training utilizes slow twitch type 1 fibers, okay? Now these are better for endurance. They don't produce a lot of lactate, okay? And when you train them, there's increased mitochondrial activity. You're set on a cellular level, all right? Energy production increases if you train these type 1 fibers, all right? They also burn fat well. Type 1 fibers burn fat well, okay? And LIT, low intensity training, can also train some of the fast twitch fibers to resemble the slow twitch fibers. Okay, so there is a bit of transference if you do your LIT. Okay, now why don't we just then do everything low intensity? Okay, because the hard sessions actually trigger growth hormone and testosterone. So there's a hormonal response when you go hard enough, and that's like another layer on top of the training. All right, so that's what we want to elicit when we go hard, but you need to go hard enough. All right, so training in the moderate, that gray zone, that's not gonna do it for you, okay? So then the next question then is like, well, how hard is hard? Like, how do I know when I'm going hard enough to elicit these responses, okay? And okay, so this is the slide that took me like the whole of last week to do, okay? So if you understand this slide, which I'll take some time to explain, then you understand why, you know, everyone's throwing this term zone 2 around. Let's keep our rides in zone 2, running in zone 2, keep our heart rate low and all that, okay? So, this is the basic graph. On this axis, we have blood lactate concentration. And on the horizontal axis, this is intensity that is measured by, well, heart rate or power. Okay, if you're a power meter on a bike, right? And so you can see that blood lactate concentration increases with increasing intensity. We all know this. Okay, so this is there are two markers, two anchor points, right? And this is this is what polarized training is all about. Okay, so we're gonna call them lactate turn point 1, all right, and lactate turn point 2. Okay, so lactate it's pretty confusing because it's also called the ventilatory threshold 1 and 2, right? And back in the day, it's also called the aerobic threshold and anaerobic threshold. So we're just gonna call them LT1, turn point 1, and LT2, turn point 2, all right? And turn point 1 is when the blood lactate concentration hits 2 millimolar, all right, per liter. And turn point 2 is when it hits 4 millimolar per liter, okay? So these are just the science guys, the science guys in the labs and stuff, they have anchored it at these 2 points, okay? Because at LT1, this is when the lactate in our blood the lactate level starts to rise, right? As exercise increases, as exercise intensity increases, it starts to rise. But then at LT2, all right, that's when the rate of increase of lactic acid, it surpasses the rate of clearance. So then it starts to rise like at an exponential rate. So if you can look at the graph, it's not drawn to scale, but that's when it really starts to curve up, okay? So that's the 2 important turn points that we need to know, okay? Now, the next 3 zones are what scientists are using, all right? So the first zone, and they only use a 3-zone model, okay? Now, because our watches, our Garmin's and all these, they're programmed to 5-zone, the next part is to understand how the 5 zones overlap with these 3 zones. But for a start, understand the 3-zone polarized model. Okay, the first zone is under LT1. Okay, so when your blood lactate is under 2 millimolar, that's your easy zone. Okay, moderate, or also called threshold zone, is between 2 and 4 millimolar, right, blood lactate. And the hard zone, so when I said, how do I know when I go hard enough? That's when you have above 4 millimolar blood lactate in you. Then that's when you consider going hard, right? So to just say again, like polarized training says 80% done here, all right? 20% done here, and none done here, right? So that, yeah. That's the gist of it. Now, the nice part is how we can overlay our normal, like our 5 training zones, right, on top of this, okay? So that's the next part. So zone 1 and 2, all right, for training purposes, take you up to LT1, all right? Zone 3 is in between LT1 and LT2, all right? Zone 4 and 5 are above LT2. Okay, so generally, are we cool with that? Like everyone understand where we're not too hard yet, right? Pretty simple. Okay.
Hi, Shyam. Can I just make a comment?
Yeah.
Okay, I think this part is where a lot of people get confused because different people use different terms to mean the same thing.
Yep.
So, for example, LT2, it's an anaerobic threshold, right?
Yep.
So, some people name the zone 3, they call it sub-threshold running.
Sure.
And then they call threshold at, so I'm just saying that sometimes when you read things, right, we get all confused because they use different terms for the same thing.
Exactly, which is one of the reasons why I had to do this. I was like, I need to get, as many people as you can together to explain, well, this is how I would name them, and I would use them in my coaching, right? So just everyone like here in the chat room on the same page, right? Okay.
Yeah.
So thanks, Nick. All right. So getting the right zones. Okay. So it becomes how easy is easy and how hard is hard. So this is where the getting the zones is exactly what you're talking about, Nick. This is so important to get the zones right. Okay. And why it's critical is because when you get the zones right and you got a big race coming up and you want to do well, then you want to be able to train in those zones correctly. So this is where the concept of intensity discipline comes in, and like that's where a lot of us that's where we fall short. Okay, we're not disciplined enough with our intensity to cap our LIT at the top of zone 2, right? And then to push our HIT like above zone 4. In my experience, like the bigger problem is capping it at zone 2. Okay, on rides, on runs, right? Like it just feels good to speed up if you're feeling good and you're feeling fit, right? So okay, so we talk a little bit about going hard enough. All right. So these are some examples, not my own. Siler, he likes to use these 4, 8, and 16-minute intervals. So here we're talking about, targeting the hard intensity, but we don't want to go like into zone 5. All right. You can't just go, okay, for a hard intensity, I'm just going to go as hard as I can, because between zone 4 and 5, the difference in like the lactate concentration in your blood is really, really high. And zone 5 does a lot more damage to you, takes a lot more recovery time, all right, than the zone 4 stuff, okay? So the zone 4 stuff is a nice, is stressful enough to elicit those hormonal changes that you want, okay? And zone 4 is defined as between 87 and 92% of your heart rate max. Okay, so you get your pins down and write that down. Okay, 87 to 92% of your heart rate max. Okay, above that, you really start to cook yourself on the zone 5 stuff. Okay, so if you can see these examples of the intervals I have put down here, these are examples of HIT, the high intensity training, 4 times 4 minutes at 90% heart rate max. Okay, so that should say over 90%, so 92%, okay, which is really quite a hard effort to get into. 4 times 8 minutes, you drop it a little bit lower, you spend a bit more time there at 90% heart rate max, or you can do like a big solid chunk of HIT work with 4 times 16 minutes, but you're doing it at 87% of your heart rate max. Okay, so we're just on that LT2, sitting on LT2 there. Okay, all right. Okay, next slide. So getting the zones right, it becomes even more important to nail down my LT1 and LT2, and that's why a lot of you guys would have spent last week doing all your testing, all right, doing all your heart rate max and your lactate threshold tests. Okay, so the biggest take home, most important thing is like just don't use 220 minus age. Whatever you do, don't use 220 minus age. because just in the last week alone, like I've had so many athletes come in, and you know, they have the heart rate of a 20-year-old, right? Their heart rate, the max heart rate is, you know, like way above 220 minus your age. And then we were getting some really funny readings with like long, easy runs and stuff like that. So if you take home anything today, it's don't use 220 minus age. Do your own field tests. Okay. Now, the second point also is to use sport-specific heart rate zones. Okay, so if you do a heart rate max test for running, that's your running heart rate max. And there should be no way that you can elicit that heart rate max on the bike, and especially on the swim as well. Okay, so use sports-specific heart rate zones with sports-specific testing. So go and test heart rate max on the bike, go and test heart rate max on the run. Okay, so now everyone is hungry to know what exactly are your magic LT1 and LT2 numbers. What are the cutoffs, right? So this again, this is from Sila and a couple of other sources. Okay, I'll put these two up. This is important. So LT1, all right, is you can use 75% of your heart rate max to cap it, all right? Or you can use 86% of your LT2. So these are done by the scientists and stuff, not by me, okay? So I'll say that again, 75% of heart rate max or 86% of LT2 heart rate. Okay, these should be close. On my own values, there's a couple of beats different, all right? And we are advised to use the higher value. Okay, so it just gives you a bit more range from the easy side of stuff. Okay, now LT2 then, all right, is your 20-minute time trial effort, whether it's run or bike, right? But 94% of that heart rate. Okay, so it's not the exact heart rate of your 20-minute time trial. It is a 94 percentile of that. Okay, why? Because the definition of LT2 is what you can go for an hour. Okay, and you know, we need to take a bit of like a bite of the humble pie with FTP and stuff like that. Like you can't really go at the same effort for an hour as you can go for 20 minutes. Okay, all right. So 94% of 20-minute time trial effort. Okay. So the thing is that then we have so now you should have LT1 and LT2 heart rates. So my athletes, like I've drawn up a spreadsheet where you can just key this in and everything will come out. I'll send this out. Okay. But it's also worth calculating how this translates to power and pace. Okay, especially for the HIT, the high intensity stuff. Now I'll tell you why. Okay, so okay, before that, quickly, zone 4 I mentioned just now. All right, here. Okay, zone 4. Where's my laser pointer? Zone 4 here. All right, here and here. This is important because we don't really want to clock a lot of time here. All right, we want to spend time here. And that range is 87 to 92% of heart rate max. Okay, so those are important, again, anchor points. Now, okay, we go on to the next slide. We'll talk a bit about testing first. Now, it's pretty straightforward, the testing, all right? For the bike, heart rate max test would be a ramp test on the trainer, on a smart trainer. Basically, I think it increases every minute or every 30 seconds until you absolutely can't go anymore. So you guys have been like hammering yourself and just pushing it, all right, until you pop. All right, and that will be your heart rate max. I did it out on a hill. So I found actually I like doing it on a hill because you can really push hard against the resistance. So I found a little climb that was about 2.5, 3 minutes long, and I did 3 repeats of those, each one in increasing intensity, all right? So the first one was about like 80%, second one was about 90%, and then the last one, because I was warmed up, so I really smashed it, seated, staying seated. I smashed it up, and I just kept pushing until I blew up. So that's your heart rate max for the bike. For the run, heart rate max can be done as you can do a 2K time trial. Okay, after a good warm up, you can run 1.6K hard, and then on that last 400, again you ramp it up. So 200 you pick up, and then the last 200 you really go all out and try and explode your heart basically, right? So it doesn't matter if you don't finish a 2K time trial, because actually what you want is to push yourself till you can't go anymore. Okay, so the 2K distance just gives a nice amount of time, right, to let your heart rate creep up towards that max. Okay, or you can do again like a hill repeat. You need to find quite a long hill, like 2 minutes up. Same format, right? 80%, 90%, and then the last one push until you blow. Okay, so that will give you your heart rate max. Okay, typically it will be 5 to 10 beats higher than your bike heart rate max, which again is like 5 to 10 beats higher than your swim heart rate max. Okay. Then for okay, so then we talk about the LTHR test, the lactate heart rate.
That's the old name.
Lactate threshold heart rate. Okay. How do we get that? You do a 20-minute time trial. Okay. So on the bike, you could just queue up on your smart trainer an FTP test, and you could do that. Okay. And your LT heart rate is 94% of your test of that 20 minutes. Okay, I shared that before. All right. And with the run, it's slightly different. For the run, I prefer, instead of using like a straight 20-minute time trial, it's a little bit more painful, but 30-minute time trial. Okay, so just as far as you can go in 30 minutes, and you take the average of the last 20. Okay, because it does take some time for that first in that first 10 minutes, your heart rate won't be as high. It won't have had time to get up to that nice kind of steady state. And you also want to burn off some of that kind of eager anaerobic energy in the first 10 minutes. Okay, so that's the field test, and that's how to do them correctly. Okay, so with that, okay, just remember, I have a note here that you're trying. Okay, so with the bike test, just remember, if you're doing it on the hills, you want the stimulus to be on your cardiovascular, so not your legs. So you don't want to be grinding a huge gear, because then your legs will give out before your heart and lungs give out. Okay, so just remember that you want it to keep it at a relatively high cadence, 80 plus, all right, to really work your cardiovascular, right, and preserve your legs for as long as you can. All right. Also, with the LT heart rate, LTHR, and FTP in general, like, it's nice to have a big FTP and everyone's like, my FTP is this and that, right? But really, it's better to underestimate it than overestimate it, because overestimating your threshold leads to poor downstream effects, right? Which means it affects everything down the line. Like everything is just a little bit too, like your LT1 will be too high, your LT2 will be too high, and it's safer to just ease back and so take 94%. That's why we take 94% of the 20-minute time trial heart rate. Okay. Okay, so training in the HIT zone, right? So this is the 20% we're talking about. Now, when I prescribe LIT, low intensity work, it's good to prescribe according to heart rate, because that puts a cap onto it. Go, like I'm at 133. Okay, I know that my LT1 turn point is at 135, so I can, even though I'm feeling awesome, I'm flying, I feel loose and I feel good, I can easily push it up. Once I hit 133, I say, okay, I gotta hold it here, or I gotta even back it down a bit, all right? But then when prescribing HIT, right, high intensity work, it's useful to prescribe according to power on the bike or pace on the run, okay? Instead of using heart rate, because there is a lag in heart rate. So your heart rate, it does take a while, 2-3 minutes to get up there. And by the time you've already done 3-4 minutes of hard work. Okay, so when prescribing HIT, I like to prescribe according to power and pace, right? But so far, we've only got the heart rate values for the LIT and the LT1 and LT2. So how then do we prescribe HIT according to power and pace, all right? So okay, so this slide, these values here are from Seiler again, okay? The bike values line up with Coggins. So Coggins is the 7-zone model. We don't have to worry about zone 6 and 7 because that's neuromuscular work, all right? So basically, these are the end of zone 1, all right, is at 55% of your FTP, right? And your FTP, I like to use 93% of 20-minute power. In fact, I would even, you might even go down to 91%, but then that would really hurt your ego, right? Like your 244 becomes 233, so that kind of sucks. So 93% of your 20-minute power, okay, is your FTP. And these bike zones, zone 1 is at 55, zone 2 is capped at 75% of FTP, so that your LIT exists below that, okay? Zone 3, upper end of zone 3 is capped at 90%, all right? So your HIT exists above that, all right? And your zone 4 is capped at 105% of your FTP, all right? And that works out to be, well, for me, like 214 to 249 watts, all right? And then your zone 5, that really like the imaging stuff, right, is right up there at the 120% of your FTP, okay? So that's for the bike. For the run, these paces are from Seiler's descriptions, all right? 74%, zone 1, 85%, zone 2, and you can see 95% of your pace, okay? So this is important. Here, we are talking about percentages of your threshold pace. So the pace that you ran in your 20-minute, your 30-minute time trial, that last 20-minute pace, all right? This is a percentage of pace, not of heart rate, okay? So this is useful because it tells me that my HIT, right, my high intensity training lies above, all right? Lies at 95 to 105% of my 20-minute time, my 20-minute pace, right, which at the moment is 440 to 420, okay? Right, so that's how to assign power and pace to heart rate, okay? You all know what we're talking about here? All good, everyone? Okay.
Still makes sense. Yes.
Yeah. It's like we've just gone from broad and we're just like funneling it down, and then now we're like, Inception, we're like in the Matrix now, and we just gotta. So that's as deep as we're gonna go. Okay. So now we're gonna talk about like how to apply it to our training. All right. So we're gonna come out a little bit. Okay. So I just mentioned that LIT. Okay. So no, this is not what I just mentioned. Okay. So what I'm gonna talk about here, point 1. Okay, LIT, can you go too easy? So some of the slacker athletes will be like, oh yeah, coach just says take it easy, right? So we're just gonna cruise around and not really work, and then I've clocked up like my 80% time, at like 50% FTP, right? So unfortunately, when you do LIT, right, we want to keep it close to that turn point 1, okay? We want to keep it right on the turn point 1, right? Without going into zone 3, but we want to keep it there because basically it's about spending time at that zone where the maximum cellular signal is accumulated. So the closer we get to LT1, right, the better the cellular signal and adaptations for low intensity are, right? So it is much better to work there than in zone 1 and just be cruising around in zone 1. Okay, and a 2-3 hour effort in zone 2 isn't anything. It's not nothing, right? It is work, right? It's not like you're not training, right? You're just being disciplined about it. Okay. So the other useful thing about LT1, that term point, is we can use it to check cardiac drift, and I just want to talk a little bit about that now. Now, cardiac drift is, let's say, you get like 2 hours, and I set you 2 hours at your LT1, okay, at your 133 heart rate or whatever, all right, and you go. Maybe it's a run, okay, and we're running along. And your pace, let's say you are running at 5:45 pace for 2 hours, and so the 5:45 pace and your heart rate, okay, is nicely matched for the first hour, all right, and then an hour and a half, and then suddenly, and then you see that the heart rate starts to increase, right, when the pace stays the same or even slows down, okay. So your pace might be at like 5:45, 6-minute pace, but your heart rate will start to increase and increase and increase and increase, okay. So that's cardiac drift, and there's a lot of reasons for that, okay? One is if it gets hot, right, then your heart rate will increase. 2, if you start to get dehydrated, your heart rate will increase as well, okay? But what we want to talk about here is it's metabolic control. Like you don't have that metabolic control yet enough to run 2 hours in zone 2. Okay, so you can get by 1 hour, by an hour and a half, but once you hit maybe an hour and a half, right, for a lesser trained athlete, a less fit athlete, it could be 20 minutes. Okay, they might be able to hold 20 minutes, and in 30 minutes, they just go up. Or like brand new untrained athletes, they might not even be able to hold like zone 2 at all. They start running and then they're over it, okay? So it's about building metabolic control specific to your race distance. Again, so this is different for if you're in like training for an OD, or if you're training for a half or a full, all right? So obviously for a full, then we're gonna have to go for a long time in that zone without experiencing or learning how to control for cardiac drift, all right? So that's why LT1 is useful, okay? And then I mentioned point 2, when we do high intensity training, okay, it's useful to get between that 87 and 92% heart rate max, because it's a nice sustainable kind of effort there, a good hard effort that you don't overcook yourself, right? And also, like if you have that mindset, then it prevents you overreaching for a personal best every time you train. Like every time you do a certain set, say, oh, last week I did it at 180 watts. Next week I want to do it 182 watts, and next week I want to do 185 watts. It prevents you from overreaching in that, right? Or on Zwift, what I see, what I see is everyone, like, you want to add 5% every week. You want to add 5% every week. You want to add 5% every week, and then soon enough, like, you can finish the session, sure, but then you are well in the zone 5 and you're flawed after every session, or you're on the floor and you're dead, right? And I've been guilty of this as well. Yeah, all right. That's just so that okay, we can cap it in zone 4. It's a nice level. We don't have to go any harder. Okay. So application to training. Point 3. High proportion of low intensity is always maintained, all right, and is extended for your specific race distance, okay. Point 4, okay, the 20 of the 80-20 is what we can manipulate. So it's not always done in HIT, okay. I'm going to talk more about this later. But so this is when we talk about how to periodize polarized training. Okay, so you're polarized, but then you are, 4 months out of a race, 2 months out of a race, right? 8 weeks out of 6 weeks out of a race, and the 20% is what we play with, okay, to get you towards race specificity. All right. So, okay, next slide. Okay, so one of the questions that's always asked is polarized training effective for, you know, low training with time crunched athletes, right? You know, if you can only train like 4 to 6 hours, 5 to 7 hours a week, then that means I would only be doing a really little bit of HIT, you know, 20 minutes here and there. Is it useful? And the evidence is that yes, it is useful for time crunched athletes. Okay, but personally, like as a coach, I noticed that there's a difference between being time crunched and being patchy. All right, so time crunch means you only have 7 hours a week, right? But if you can get that 7 hours a week consistently every week, then that's fine. You can use polarized training, is going to work for you, right? But patchy training is when some weeks you do 3, some weeks you do none, some weeks you do 8, all right? That's different. And, you know, for an athlete that can only put in patchy training, then I would say that, you know, doing threshold work is still the biggest bang for the buck, all right? Because, you know, like, for example, if you miss your long run of the week, all right, long easy run, if you've missed your hard interval session, and you know you only have time for one run, then go out and do a threshold session, because again, that's the biggest bang for the buck. Instead of working the polar ends, you're just working the middle, right? And you're working it quite hard, right? So that's when threshold training is quite useful, okay? Point 6, regular recovery cycles still apply to athletes, but it's quite dependent on the individual athlete. If you are, again, consistent 100%, right, then you might need a recovery week once every 3 weeks, 4 weeks, all right? If you are patchy, or you know how to kind of self-regulate, okay, and you know, okay, like I'm a bit tired, I'll take a day off, or I'll go easier, or I'll skip a session, then maybe you need a recovery every like 6 weeks or 8 weeks, right? So again, it's very quite individual, all right? How to do a recovery week? You can drop your HIT session altogether for that week. So that week can be just a week of easy, all right? A week of all LIT. You can drop the zone 2 to zone 1, all right? Okay, or you can drop the total volume. You can still do HIT, but you can drop it by like 30 to 40%, all right? So you just, on that week, you're just keeping the systems awake, but you're not really building any more fatigue. You're not hammering yourself at all, okay? Point 7, use LIT to cap effort and cost. What am I talking about here? Okay, no, this, I've already talked about this, right? This is using heart rate for LIT and pace and power for HIT. But also importantly, remember to cross-reference it with rate of perceived effort. Okay, so if you're feeling particularly tired on a day and you still want to go out and train, right? Then, and it's a low intensity run, then just go according to how you feel. Don't worry about matching it to your heart rate. Go way lower than your LT2 heart rate. Okay, you can, yeah, you know, you can go in zone 1. Okay, so always cross-reference with how you feel, your rate of perceived effort, because that gives you a lot of signals into how fatigued you are. Okay, and also the obvious stuff like if you didn't have a good night's sleep or whatever, you got jet lag, you've been traveling, and all that. You can't muscle through that stuff. That's just life. You know, you can't. You know, it's not good to always push through, because then you end up, you know, like a little bit wired, a little bit burnt out. Okay. Okay. Next slide. Application to training. Okay, so I don't want to talk too much about this today, but we're talking about point 9 is about doing your LIT fasted. I'm not an expert in the whole fat adaptation and keto acidosis and all that kind of. I know a little bit, but I haven't done it myself. you know, it's not for everyone, but I'm not talking about that here. Okay, I'm not talking about being fat adapted here. Okay, that's another talk. I'm just talking about doing like some of your LT1 and below training fasted, because studies have shown that there is better cellular signaling, all right? And it improves your fat metabolism. And as you know, like fat is a infinite store on our body, and it produces more calories per gram than carbohydrates. So it's a good fuel source. Doing your LIT fasted starts to open up some of those signals and pathways, right? So there's a couple of ways to do it. And then before you all like rush out and ride, double RTI on water and salt, okay? A couple of ways to do it. So one is you start in an intermittent fasted state. So you wake up, you have a coffee, and actually I like to add a little bit of coconut oil with my coffee, so it gives me that fat, that oil to metabolize, right? This is for like a long run or a long ride. And then you do that training fasted, right? So you do the first hour to 90 minutes fasted. After that, you're gonna start needing to put something in you, because you just won't be able to put up meaningful. Well, again, it varies, right? But for it's good, yeah. A couple of reasons, all right? One is you might not be able to put up meaningful power after that time, okay? The second reason is that if you start the 60 to 90 minutes or like 2 hours, like fasted, when you take that gel, when you take that first bit of carbohydrate, like the sensitivity of your body is heightened, and you can really start to feel the effect of your body burning sugar instead of fat, all right? And this is something that is quite nice. Some of you might be able to pick it up, like like if you're riding around, you've gone for a while, you know that now it feels a little bit different from burning sugar, right? Burning fat it's just like very stable kind of energy, right? Whereas like the gel, you can get that spike and then like crash after, okay? So fasting, low intensity training is useful, okay? Okay, and the other application to training is that, so we do 80% in LIT, okay? And how does that look in your training plans, okay? So it looks like LIT in disguise, meaning if I give you an active recovery session, all right, 40 minutes on the bike, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, easy run, all right, that's me wanting you to do LIT, right, low intensity work. So don't try and push that, okay? It's not better to replace your active recovery with your second hard session in a day, all right? Another way to disguise low intensity work is doing big gear work on the bike. So that's awesome as well, because that's a really good workout. But if you notice, if you do like big gear work on the bike, big gear meaning heavy resistance, all right, your heart rate doesn't really get up there in the red zones, but you're still working your legs, right? So that's a nice way, like 3 times 12 minutes in the big gear is a nice way to work, muscular endurance, right, on your bike, all right, while keeping that in the low intensity training package, right? If you see in your training plan like a long warm-up, 20, 30-minute warm-up, right, don't skip it. If you can, don't skip it, all right? Long cool down, 20-minute cool down, all right? It's all there because that's part of the LIT portion, all right? And swimming as well, like, this is my own, maybe I just don't swim hard enough, but I think most of the swims can be categorized into LIT, all right? Because your heart rate stays low, right? So like an endurance swim, even a variable pace, even a low grade kind of a threshold swim, those are pretty much low intensity, right? And it's only the 50-meter sprints, 200-meter all out, that sort of stuff. That's when you start to push into the HIT zone with swimming, and that's not very much in a week. Okay. All right. So let me just check my notes. Okay. So far so good. All right. Okay, so we only got like a couple of slides left. So then what about our old friend, right? Threshold tolerance work, okay? Is it too much pain for too little gain, right? Does this still have a purpose? Is there any point in doing like, 20 times 400 with 30-second rest, right? That's my favorite set of all time. I do it just for fun, right? Is there any point in doing on the trainer, right? 1 minute all out, 30-second rest, right? 30 times. That's a tolerance set, importantly, it still has its place. Okay. So its place is for the new and not so well-trained athletes for them to get up to speed. So if I'm working with a new athlete, a newbie, and they're not very fit, then giving them lots of tolerance work is like the low-hanging fruit. It gets them up to speed. It gets them fit quick, right? But the plateau will eventually come, right? And that's when injuries start to come because they're stuck in this tolerance training kind of model, and they love it because it feels good, like lots of endorphin release, right? But then they plateau. So the only way they know how is to push harder and harder and harder at those in those threshold intervals, and those are very taxing on the body, right? So you have to, as a coach, I have to be very careful to look for when that happens, right? And in a sense, an endurance athlete really matures into this polarized training kind of mindset, okay? Because after the first like 2 years, 3 years, they're now more they're more into the sport, and they're more willing to commit more time and the longer training hours into their training, right? So after they've experienced that rush of like the getting fit with the tolerance work, right? They kind of wise up and realize that, oh, hang on, like this polarized training, that's a more sustainable way of putting in the big hours, right? And also your body becomes more able to absorb the hard training stuff, okay? So that's one use of the tolerance work, okay? The inconsistent, the time-strapped athletes, right? Again, I mentioned that it's best bang for the buck. If you do one run a week, that's the one you should do, all right? If you do one swim a week, that's the one you should do, all right? Okay, this is what's gonna lead into the tail end of the talk. Race specificity and race-specific workouts, okay? When we transition towards a more pyramidal model, so then you're like, oh my God, like there's polarized and there's pyramidal, what's he talking about, okay? So I'm gonna go into this a little bit, okay? Just note that, I still like to do threshold work, but maybe once every 2 weeks, once every 3 weeks, or as a specific, like a special occasion, like a test set, I'll do like 3400s, 4400s, just to tick it off and just to compare it to the last time I did that set. I get a good gauge of like how my fitness is, right? And I like doing it, okay? That's the bottom line for me, right? So let's talk about this point 3 here, race-specific workouts, okay? And that's when we talk about periodized polarized training. So that 20%, how does that 20% change from pre-competition, right, to race specificity, okay? So we're all agreed that lots of LIT is needed, right? But how do we solve for the 20, right? So the 20%, all right, it will vary according to the race demands, right? The distance of the race, if you're racing OD, half Ironman or full Ironman, okay? The time out from the race day, again, like I said, if you're 4 months out, 2 months out, 4 weeks out, okay? And of course, the individual athlete, right? So, okay, so we're talking about HIT. So I'm just reading some of my notes here. Okay, so when we talk about race specificity, we're talking about like 8 weeks, 10 to 8 weeks, again 6 to 10 weeks, 12 weeks for some before race day. Okay, we have to look at the course. Now, riding well on a flat course, Baso, right? I mean, like Baso and Danang, right? It's going to take a different type of training. These are the details, right? From riding like a punchy course, right? Like Bintan, right? And also different training from riding like the Nice course, which is like the first 30 Ks, it's just up like that, okay? So this is where we change the 20% for race specificity, okay? So in the pre-competition phase, what I have here is like, this is a 20, okay? So we have LHT is the lactate training, okay? Lactate threshold, it's the zone 3, the moderate. HIT is the hard, all right? So we can have 5 and 15%. The 80 is on the LIT side, all right? So your HIT can be of a higher volume, all right? Your threshold training can be lower, all right? In your race specific phase, all right? Again, that's like the 6 to 12 weeks depending. Then you can kind of reverse that, and you can put you can increase the volume of your threshold training and drop the high intensity training, okay? Why I say that is because it allows us to spend time closer to race intensity, okay? That's why it's called race specificity. You're gonna be, and at this point, it's not really so much about building fitness anymore. It's, you're still gonna get fitter, but it's about conditioning yourself for the intensity that you will be racing at, right? Getting efficient at that race intensity, however long that might be for you, okay? Okay. Okay, so after the race specific phase, then we have peaking, which is like just before the taper. All right, now this is interesting. The studies have shown that like for peaking, it's like really just a week or two of really like sharpening up and starting to let your body rest, right? Is that you should do it even more polarized. All right, so your zone 2 stuff, this easy work should be done even easier, okay? And then the zone 4 stuff, you push it up, and that should become even harder. All right, so that's how to bring on that peak. All right, and then you hit the taper, which is the 10 to depending on again on you, like 7 days, 4 days, or 2 week, right, taper. What's important is to maintain the frequency of high intensity training, right? So if you're training like 2 times a week, 3 times a week HIT, then you still do the same, but you reduce the training load by reducing rep time or number of reps, okay? And then the overall volume reduced by 30 to 40% again, all right? Okay, so that's how that's a little bit about the periodization of that 20%, okay? So this is what it looks like. In the end, it's just names, all right? It's just names. So the polarized, you have 80, and then this 5% here, maybe, it's just you haven't done the HIT hard enough. So you have 5, and then you have 15 here. When you go to pyramidal, okay, you have maybe a little bit less. So you have 75% here. You have 20% on the threshold stuff, and just like 5%, little bit on the HIT stuff, okay? So in both cases, you can see that the common denominator is the vast amount of training time spent in LIT, right? I think personally, as for triathletes, because okay, so we go back. A lot of the studies have been done on like rowers, swimmers, cyclists, single modality, all right, and runners as well, right? But for triathletes, we have to juggle 3 sports, okay? So actually, I think that the pyramidal system, this system here, can work well as well, right? As long as this is maintained, the high volume of LIT is maintained, then, you know, the threshold training is useful at the right time, okay? So it's not about avoiding certain zones, you know, it's about knowing what you're training for and training accordingly, right? And when you're training for what is that big day that you need to do well in, okay? All right, so that kind of about wraps it up. The conclusion is, so polarized training is not a simple like cut and paste formula, right? Okay, but the general principles are clear and they're useful for us to frame our training, okay? Oh, that's okay. Accurate calibration is the first step. Okay, that's got to be done right. Okay, then you have to have intensity discipline, right? And then build sound metabolic control. So for endurance athletes, this is where the, you know, that cardiac drift, we want to minimize that with respect to the distance that we're going, all right? And then also to be flexible with the 20, the HIT, that's what you play around with. And just to think about, you know, time out from race, how your body is feeling, and what sort of course you're racing on, okay? And bottom line is, if it means, you know, you don't go out surging on an easy set day ride, that alone will be worth it, okay? So if you can go out and set day and have a nice chilled ride and know and be confident that you're doing the right work for yourself, right? So that on Tuesday you can push well into that, you know, zone 4, then that's what it's about, okay? So so the presentation's over now, okay? Discussion time. If you have any questions and answers, or we can talk about whatever you have any questions on, all right? So over to you guys. Thanks for listening. I don't know how many of you still there, but that was fun for me.
Hi, Shem. Thanks. This is William. I just want to ask, how does all those core or strength workout fit into this 80-20 rule?
So I didn't talk about that because I don't know. But okay, so strength work, core strength, and the lifting that I have you guys on, okay? I don't know whether to put that in high intensity or the low intensity zone, okay? But I know that I would put it on a day, I would schedule it into a day where, and this is where my changing has changed a little bit in my research into all this. I would put it on a hard day as opposed to an easy day, right? I would put it on a HIT day. So I would put it after a VO2 max session on the bike, right? So that your LIT days can be easy, right? You know what I mean, Will? So that when you head out on the set day for your long, you know, soon it'll be going to be 4 or 5 hour bike rides, right? Then that's all you do. And then the rest of the time, you let your body keep it in that LIT state, right? Whereas previously, I would have thought, oh, okay, that's an easy day. Let's just sneak in some strength work here because it's an easy day. Now, my thinking has changed to keeping that easy day easy, right? And putting in a little bit of strength work on a day that you're doing HIT, or even just doing, and I know a lot of you guys won't like this, but you know, I was doing this personally myself, is just having a strength day on its own, right? A gym day on its own, because really like pushing it's really so kind of hormonal, right? I would just do strength on its own, an hour and a half in the gym, and I wouldn't do anything else, no bike, no run, no swim on that day, okay? Because you want to put everything into that strength set. And of course, that's also in the pre-competition phase, all right?
Didn't you say that riding in a high gear, or so grinding it, is like giving your body a rest because your heart rate's low? So wouldn't strength training be similar to that?
Yes. Yes, you're right, Michelle. It is like I always think the big gear stuff is like going to the gym for in a cycling specific way. Um, but in my experience, I think that the heavy lifting, like the heavy 4 rep max deadlift or the Bulgarian split squats and all that, that sort of stuff, it's good to do early in the season, like pre-season, early in the season, right? So that when we get towards like the race season, and also good to do during like lockdown time. That's I think that's one of the best things you can do during the recent lockdown and all that. Okay, when you're not in race specific season, it's good to lift heavy, all right? Especially as we age up, because that's when we just lose muscle, like it just that.
Ouch.
I mean, it's the truth. It's the truth.
I know.
Yeah.
But it's always harsh to be reminded of the truth, isn't it?
Oh well, that's why I'm here.
Sam, I guess in that sense, I mean, based on what you just described about heavy lifting versus just they say just a simple core exercises like plank and stuff like that. So I assume those lighter core exercises will be all right.
Yeah,
even though on an easy day.
Yeah. Yes, you can still work on your 6-pack, make it an 8-pack. That's fine, no problem. Okay. I don't mind. My FE is looking very hot. That's good. Yeah. So like within reason, yes, core work, a bit of yoga, Mel. That's always very welcome. Yeah, but that's very, very different from the stimulus you get from the heavy lifting, all right?
Yeah, I just find that the core, I mean, it's not so much of 6-pack or anything. It's more that I find the core workout really helped me in my run in the last couple of months or so. So I just like to do that if I can.
That's good, but it also because the last few months you've been running very easy. Don't forget, right? You've been running, and I've got you to cap it and all that. So yeah, that's why as well, all right? But I know what you mean. Being able to hold your posture, all right, and your hips, just being able to feel the power go into the ground much better instead of when it's lost, if you're a bit loose, all right? Okay. Any other questions, anyone?
Sham.
Yeah, Paul.
So some of us, we have other sports as well. So whether it's yeah, right. So do we just go ahead and do it and then take the easy day off the next day, or replace it with something, or it's better not to just not do it at all?
Well, I mean, therein lies the question of like quality of life, and having friends who play tennis and having friends who play golf and not seeing them very much. So from a purist point of view, I would say juggling the swim, bike, run is already enough, right? But from a life point of view, then of course we have to look at the what kind of effect that sport has, right? So if it's golf, or if it's tennis, right? They're two different kind of, or if it's soccer, right? Basketball, you have to look at what sport it is, okay? So maybe you can elaborate, and then I can help. You're talking about
so like once a week golf or once a week tennis. So golf, it usually takes like 4 hours. Tennis be like 2 hours. So if it's like tennis, it might be quite high intensity. Depends. So usually if I were to do like a Sunday, like an easy ride or easy run, and I've got to go and play tennis after that. But today, I'm pretty dead.
Pretty tired, yeah.
Yeah. So should I take Monday off, or should I give up the tennis and just carry on?
Well, I mean, if you enjoy the tennis, I wouldn't take that away from you, definitely. Then I would find, the first thing that comes to mind is like fueling, like, after that easy bike ride, like you got to make sure that you fueled up for that tennis game, all right? So you really need to get a really solid meal in there, and you can't play tennis just on a bottle of water. Okay, you need to get the calories going through that, even more so than if you were playing tennis alone without having the bike before that. Okay, so that's really important. The fueling in between the sessions. Okay, and then the Monday rest on the Monday. I mean, it depends on how knackered you are. You could take a day off, but often I find that, you know, an LIT session with a few hard spikes in them helps with the recovery. Okay, because it just, like, for example, I was really tired yesterday. All right, so I just went out for a ridiculously easy run, and then I charged up a short hill, 20 seconds, right, like 5-6 times, and I, you know, it woke me up and helped me to get through the day better. So I think that that sort of recovery session is good to do, right? You don't build any more fatigue, but you are just trying to elicit that hormonal response that will just brighten you up a little bit. Okay.
All right.
Shem, I've got a question.
Yeah, hey.
Yeah. So for me specifically, for a long run, it's inevitable that I creep into that tempo purely at the latter part of the run because I do suffer from heat. And so it's not just me. Again, it just depends on the conditions as well.
Yep.
So is creeping into that zone 3 for whatever it might be 10% or 15% of that run, how does that affect things? And would you recommend then to like dial the pace right down?
Yep.
When you can see that heart rate creeping up?
Yep. Yep.
So is that what you recommend? Is just to dial the pace completely right down?
Absolutely. That's what I would do, because you see, if you're stuck somewhere like 2-hour run and then the cardiac drift starts to happen, right? That means you're okay. You have that metabolic control for 2 hours, but beyond that, like your body, it just can't cope. So what I would do is I'd stop and walk. Actually, I'll just walk, and it's a process of training that extension, right?
But it varies. Like again, it depends on the day. Like as you rightly pointed out, some days, if I start early enough and I can get majority of my run done before the sun comes up, then I'm okay. If I start a bit later, then half an hour in and my heart rate's already.
Yep.
Or if Alex runs past and then that's it. Heart rate's the whole workout's shot.
Yeah, we know who is a public enemy here.
or Mike.
Yeah, or Mike. Yeah, but yeah. So you know, my question, my answer to that would be to stop and walk. Let it drop down and let it drop way down, because if you let it drop just below LT1, you find that within 10 steps it will go up again. All right, so let it drop, walk, let it really settle down, get fully aerobically recovered, as if you hadn't, the heart rate was at like resting level, and then very slowly just hobble along till you get home, and just teach your body how to keep it there, even when it's hot, even when it's dehydrated. Okay, that's what I'll do.
Thanks, man.
Yep.
On the same vein, a lot of the time when we do our training, or when I do my training, it's before the sun comes up. But when we actually race, frequently it will be like mid-morning. Okay.
Yep.
And it's a totally different environment.
Yep.
So you therefore say we should, like, on weekends spend more time training later to simulate race conditions, or can we just go ahead and train before the sun comes up?
So I know you're asking really about acclimatization and the worth of going out in the blazing sun. And
that affects cardiac variability as well.
Absolutely. For me personally, like, there's nothing you could do. I mean, I'm just getting soft in my old age, right? But there's nothing you could do to get me running in the heat, okay, the blazing heat, because I know how much more I'm affected by that, how much more recovery I need, how whacked I am after that run. Okay, so I wouldn't do it every week. I wouldn't look out and say, oh, it's hot now, I'll go and run, right? What I would do though is to teach your body how to respond to the heat close to the race day, right? So 2 weeks out from race day, you know, then you would start to hit, you would start to go out for your runs or your rides in the heat, okay? But then again, I wouldn't do the full like 2-hour run in the heat, okay? You only need maybe like 40 minutes. Start with 20, go on to 40, all right? Maybe an hour in the heat, right? Maybe 4 or 5 times. Again, you got to see how much it takes to teach your body. What you want to do with heat acclimatization is to teach your body how to respond in the heat, and to and for you to understand that in the heat you can't run at the same pace as when it's cool or in the evening, right? So you teach your body how to get better at, you know, opening up the capillaries, right? Like sweating more, right? All that kind of stuff. How to deal with less blood, you know, because of loss of blood volume, or because the blood is all sequestered onto the surface of your skin, right? So that's the physiological part, but the mental part also is also just to give you an idea that, okay, on race day, it's going to be 38 degrees or 36 degrees out there. This is what it's going to feel like. You have a kind of a benchmark. Okay, it's going to be, you know, bloody hot. I just got to suck it up and deal with it, right? As opposed to having a rude shock on the day itself, right? But with heat acclimatization, I always say do it close to the race and do it frequently, close to the race, but in little bits, 20, 40 minutes at the most, okay?
Yep, thanks.
Okay.
Shem, when is your next training session?
My next training session, I'm on lockdown, okay, John? I'm enjoying my lockdown very much. No, I'm gonna give it a little while to start up. So probably now it's in July, I'm looking at starting up the track sessions again, because we, you know, like right now, I know we can get 5 people out there, but I don't want to be the guy who, you know, starts a cluster, right? So we can technically, we can do like three groups of 5 or whatever, but no point. Yeah, no point, right? Yeah.
Yep. Okay, thanks.
Okay.
Yeah, so I can just ask something. It's just a general question.
Yeah.
Obviously, you have to do a fair bit of volume for this to work. What about the average guy who runs, let's say, 5 km 4 times a week, 20 km a week, and he does it all in zone 3? Is there any benefit for him to go this way? I mean, since the volume is so low?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, absolutely. Nick, it depends again on what the goals are, right?
Yeah, if he wants to optimize his performance, but doesn't, he only got time for 20 km a week, and then that's it.
Absolutely, absolutely, yeah, absolutely. Straight away I would tell you, could you? Can you? It would even be better, instead of running 4 times a week, 20K each time. Could you group 2 of them together and put in one longer one? So do a 10K, right, and then do 2 5Ks. So that's one way to polarize, right? Yeah. So that's one way to get that long, for you, like 60 minutes would be long, right? So that's one way to get that long, easy session in, right? Yeah. And then you look at strength. So, for another one of the, 5Ks would take maybe like a half an hour door to door, right? Do what I said, go out and charge up a hill, 5, 6 to 10 times, 20-second repeats, short repeats, because that builds strength, okay? And it's really good for like neuromuscular, like programming, your stride rate and everything. It's like, resistance training. So hill repeats, I believe in short, hard hill repeats, very much. Yeah, so bottom line is mix it up. Yeah, definitely mix it up. Okay, you can do the third run could be something like if you have 30 minutes to run, you do a 10-minute warm up, and then you do like 15-minute time trial, right? So you just run, and that's a threshold kind of a run. Okay, so you're hitting different systems with each run. So each run has a different purpose, right? And in that way, you just become a more well-rounded runner. Definitely you will see the improvements over repeating the same stimulus 4 times a week, for sure, 100%.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay. Hey, Vince. Good to see you there. Okay, what's up? Anything, any other questions?
So, Shem, I guess.
Can I ask? Oh,
sorry.
Roy?
Yeah.
What's up?
So I'm guessing that's what we'll be rolling into over the next couple of weeks, plans for ourselves. And if I were to summarize all of it in a nutshell, right, keep the low intensity one within LT1 for by the days. Good question earlier from I think was Hey. Essentially try to keep the heart rate at that level. And then the high intensity stuff we would work either on power or on pace in that targeted area. Both for bike and what about for swim? Would you see something similar? Because I can't meaning
Okay,
a slow swim or
so swimming is a little bit more difficult to track because of the heart rate issues in the pool, right? I don't think even with the waterproof, the heart rate meter and all that, I don't think it works that well. And I think I alluded to this just now, is that like most of the swimming is going to be low intensity, all right? And I'll use the high intensity stuff really, I find it very hard to track the high intensity of the swimming, but I would use it instead to elicit that hormonal response, right? Which is why on the Monday swims that we do, it's the short, hard sprints to wake us up from the weekend stuff, right? The weekend kind of long LIT stuff. So, and I mean, I'm glad you brought this up because swimming is actually another way to sneak in some LIT, to pad the LIT hours up, right? The minutes in LIT, because I can disguise it as a recovery swim, 1K or 2K easy with paddles and pool boy to keep the heart rate down, right? But then actually you're swimming, right? But you're actually also working your cardiovascular system at a very nice low kind of basey level, right? So that's why it's useful to swim more than twice a week if you can, right?
Got it. Thanks.
Cool.
Shem, I wanted to ask you about the, you got me on twice a week doing hill repeats.
Yep.
Right, and I smash those, right? I actually proudly look at my heart rate to see how high I can hit my heart rate. But what you're saying is it should be kept within zone 4?
Well, see, I don't take that away from you, Mike, because I know you love doing that. I know that's a big part of your sanity and dealing with your work and all that. So I don't take that away from you. But yes, for optimal training purposes, then it would be slightly more nuanced than that, right? Okay, and I would get you to look at heart rate. I would get you to actually work up a longer hill rather than the 20-second repeats that we've been doing, okay, and to spend time in that zone, okay? Yeah.
Okay.
But you please keep enjoying your heart. just don't hurt yourself, right? I think Ben did that on his Ben's another one. His heart rate max test came back with a niggle behind his knee, right? Yeah.
I just do what you tell me to do, Shem. Whatever it says.
Good work. Good work. That's why I keep you around. Okay. How are we going? Any other questions?
Shem, this is Greg. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Hey, quick question. You got us doing all our tests and everything. What's next from this after this, I guess, is sort of trying to link up against what we're doing. I know that I saw some of the replication of the test. You get it from us, but maybe share with us a little bit what it is moving forward.
Okay. So you guys have been really good with your testing. What I've been working on the side, and it's pretty much ready, is I've taken the thinking out of it and the pain out of it for you, and I've built an Excel sheet where you just plug in your numbers. So you plug in your heart rate max, bike and run, you plug in your LTHR, heart and bike and run, okay? Then it'll come up with all the zones for you, okay? Then it is really up to you to go and calibrate this thing to those zones. So you can manually put zones into this, right? Or you can just remember LT1 is this heart rate, LT2 is this power, okay? So you can practice your intensity discipline, okay? And so that's what, and I know that some of you your plans are due, so you can look forward to some of these ideas in your plans, right? Just, realize that it's not a complete departure from how we've been going, right? It really isn't. It's just that now we can give it a name, we can give it some values, and it's just an elegant way to do it. And of course, if a 20 years lifetime professor working on this says it is going to hold more clout than if you might not believe me if I say it, but if I say Stephen Silas says it or Matt Fitzgerald, then I can back it up, and then you guys might be slightly more obedient in terms of intensity discipline. Okay. Right. All good?
That's it. Thank you.
Anyone else? No? Okay, so yeah. So thanks for spending the afternoon with me. I got an excuse not to deal with the kids, which will be banging down the door. I will see you guys soon. Like, I'm really looking forward to riding with you guys, running with you guys soon. And when the races come up, that'll be fun. Keep in touch, and I'll let you know. I've got some ideas on what to do. I think this is working well. Like, I got a great response, so thanks. I'll take another couple of months to come up with the next webinar. Okay. Cool.
Shem, can I request that the FTP one that some of us missed? Maybe you could do another webinar. I mean, those slides are already prepared. You don't need to. You don't need to stay up to 2 a.m.
Thank you, Greg. Yes, that's right. That first one was about beyond FTP, right?
That's right.
Okay, yes, we can do it in this format. Thank you. That's. I don't even have to stay up for 2 nights to do that. Thank you. All right.
Thanks, Shane.
All right, no worries. Have a good one, everyone. Take it easy. Bye.
Thanks, Sham.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Cheers.
It's a good one.
Nice one.
All right. Nice one.
Adios, guys.
Good.
Bye-bye.
Bye.